The automatic doors hissed open as Sarah Robinson stepped inside Harvest Mart, the first store she ever built, but this time, no one recognized her. Gone was the polished billionaire in white blazers and press photos. In her place stood a woman in a thrift sweater, sneakers, and a name tag that read Sarah Reynolds, cashier trainee. No one knew that the new hire mopping the floors was the CEO of the entire chain. She'd come undercover after receiving a series of anonymous emails, messages that spoke of mistreatment, fear, and one particular store where the walls keep secrets. But nothing in those letters prepared her for what she was about to see. At Register 5 stood Amber Roberts, a young black cashier struggling to scan groceries with one arm trapped in a cast. Her other hand trembled as she reached for each item. A thick bandage wrapped her neck. A purple bruise darkened one eye. And despite it all, she whispered, "Thank you, have a blessed day," to a customer who didn't even look at her. Sarah froze mid-step. Her heart twisted. This wasn't the polished image of employee excellence her company loved to advertise. This was pain hiding in plain sight. She turned her head slightly, watching Amber wipe a tear when she thought no one was looking. The sound of scanners, the smell of floor cleaner, the faint hum of pop music, everything felt painfully normal. But the silence between those beeps told another story. And that's when it hit her. Something was deeply wrong here. And what she was about to discover would break her heart and change her company forever. Before we continue with the story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you hate workplace harassment and stand with people who deserve safety and respect. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We love seeing how far our stories travel. Sarah took a slow breath, forcing herself to move. The mission had begun. For years, she'd been told that Harvest Mart was a family. But looking around this store, with its fluorescent lights, silent employees, and a cashier hiding bruises beneath a company apron, Sarah wondered what kind of family allowed this kind of pain. She signed in at the back office as Sarah Reynolds, her new alias. The store's regional manager, Jeremy Cruz, barely looked up from his desk when she entered. "Name," he muttered. "Sarah Reynolds." "Right, the temp. You'll start on floor duties. Stocking, cleaning, bagging. We don't tolerate laziness here, got it?" His tone dripped with condescension, the kind of fake authority that thrived on fear. Sarah forced a polite smile. "Got it, sir." Jeremy glanced her over once, unimpressed. "You can shadow one of the cashiers for today. Amber." Across the store, Amber Roberts flinched at the sound of her name. Jeremy's voice was sharp, commanding, the kind that didn't ask, it ordered. "Get over here," he barked. "You've got a trainee." Amber's injured arm was cradled close to her body as she walked over, her eyes flicking between Jeremy and Sarah. "Yes, sir," she said softly. Jeremy's gaze hardened. "Don't baby her. I need you both productive by lunch." Then, without another word, he walked off, already shouting orders at someone else. Amber sighed quietly, motioning toward Register 5. "Come on. I'll show you the ropes." They worked side by side in near silence. The hum of the scanner filled the gaps between small talk. Every now and then, Sarah caught Amber wincing when she lifted her arm or twisted too quickly. After a few minutes, Sarah broke the silence. "Does he always talk to people like that?" Amber forced a small, practiced smile, the kind that didn't reach her eyes. "He talks worse when customers aren't around." Sarah felt anger stir inside her, but she kept her voice even. "You shouldn't have to deal with that." Amber just shook her head. "It's fine. It's just a job." But it wasn't fine. Nothing about this was fine. Sarah watched as Amber greeted each customer with warmth and patience, despite the pain in her eyes. A mother came through with 2 kids. Amber gave the youngest a sticker, smiling as if the cast and bruises didn't exist. "You're really good with people," Sarah said quietly. Amber glanced at her, surprised. "Thank you. It's just, people come in with their own problems. I don't want to add to them." Sarah swallowed hard. There was something profoundly selfless about her, a kindness that persisted even when life had been cruel. Then, as Amber scanned another customer's items, Sarah noticed Jeremy standing a few aisles away, watching them. His jaw was tight, his arms crossed. Amber noticed too. Her hand shook slightly, and her voice faltered. Have a great day," she said, forcing a smile. The customer left. Jeremy turned away. Amber exhaled in relief. Sarah leaned closer, whispering, "You don't have to be scared of him." Amber's reply was barely a whisper. "It's not just him I'm scared of." Later that afternoon, Sarah sat in the cramped employee break room, pretending to scroll her phone while the other workers chatted around her. "She's back again like that," one cashier murmured. "Same arm, same bruises." "She says she fell," another replied. "But we all know better. Didn't Jeremy say HR can't get involved unless it happens on company time?" "Yeah. Guess that's his way of saying don't ask questions." Sarah felt her stomach twist. The whispers, the fear, the silence. This was the culture her company had created without her realizing it. Amber entered quietly a moment later, clutching a paper cup of coffee. The room fell silent. The other workers avoided her eyes. Sarah caught her gaze and smiled gently. "You can sit here if you want." Amber hesitated, then sat across from her. "Rough day?" Sarah asked. Amber shrugged. "They are all rough. You shouldn't have to do this alone." Amber's eyes softened for a moment, the first crack in her armor. But before Sarah could say more, the break room door slammed open. "Jeremy, break's over," he barked. His eyes locked on Amber. Register 5's backed up. "Move." Amber jumped to her feet so quickly that her coffee nearly spilled. "Yes, sir." As she hurried out, Jeremy turned to Sarah, narrowing his eyes. "You're the new one, right? Let me give you some advice." He leaned closer, his voice dropping. "Keep your head down and your mouth shut. You'll last longer that way." Sarah held his stare, calm, controlled. But inside, her pulse thundered. Because this wasn't just a bad manager. This was something darker. That night, as she clocked out and stepped into the parking lot, Sarah saw Amber again, this time waiting by the curb, her shoulders tense. A white pickup truck pulled up. Jeremy Cruz was behind the wheel. Sarah froze in the shadows as Amber hesitated, clutching her casted arm. Jeremy leaned out the window. "Get in." "Please, not here," Amber whispered. "Get in." She did. Head down. Silent. The truck door slammed shut. The sound echoed across the empty parking lot. And that's when Sarah realized. The man who commanded fear inside the store was the same one controlling her life outside it. Sarah had come undercover to investigate workplace complaints. But what she'd uncovered instead was something much worse. A woman trapped in a cycle of pain, under the watch of a man she trusted to lead. The hum of the fluorescent lights filled the break room, mixing with the distant sound of shopping carts clattering across the tile floor. It was 1:14 p.m., lunchtime at Harvest Mart, and every employee looked too tired to talk. Sarah sat quietly in the corner, her new name tag, Sarah Reynolds, crooked on her borrowed apron. She stirred her coffee, pretending not to listen. But she was listening to everything. 2 cashiers sat at the next table, whispering in voices too soft for Jeremy Cruz to hear if he walked by. "She came in like that again," one murmured. "Arm in a cast, bruised up. Said she fell again." "Yeah," the other whispered back. "And he told her not to bring personal drama to work. Like she asked to be hurt." "Jeremy." "Who else?" Sarah's stomach tightened. The words were barely audible, but they burned like fire. She looked up just in time to see Amber Roberts enter, holding a small paper cup of coffee with her good hand. Her apron hung loosely, one strap slipping off her shoulder. The room went silent. No one said a word. Amber smiled weakly, her voice gentle but shaky. "Hey, y'all." A few mumbled greetings came back, but no one met her eyes. The silence wasn't rudeness, It was fear. Sarah gestured to the empty seat beside her. Want to sit? Amber hesitated, then nodded. Thanks. She sat down slowly, resting her casted arm on the table. Rough day? Sarah asked quietly. Amber gave a faint laugh. Aren't they all? The sound was light, but her eyes weren't. They carried the exhaustion of someone who hadn't truly rested in years. Sarah wanted to ask, who did this to you? But instead she said, I saw the way he talked to you earlier. Jeremy. That's not right. Amber froze, just for a second, then shook her head. Please, don't. Don't make it worse. Worse. Amber's voice dropped to a whisper. He can make your life miserable here. He decides the shifts, the hours, who gets written up, who gets fired. If he thinks you're talking about him. She stopped, glancing at the door. He finds out everything. Sarah swallowed hard, hiding the rage rising in her chest. She'd seen bad management before, but this was something else. Control, intimidation, fear that stretched far beyond a paycheck. Before she could respond, the door slammed open. Jeremy Cruz strode in, holding a clipboard. His presence sucked the air out of the room. Break's over, he barked, his tone sharp enough to cut glass. His eyes darted toward Amber. Register 5's backed up. Move it. Amber jumped to her feet so quickly she spilled her coffee. I'm going. Now, he snapped, stepping closer. Sarah rose halfway from her chair. She's on break, she said calmly. Jeremy's head turned slowly toward her. Excuse me. You gave her a 15-minute lunch, Sarah continued evenly. It's only been 12. He smirked, the kind of smirk that came from years of unchecked power. You must be new here. Let me give you some advice. He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice so only she could hear. Keep your head down, do what you're told, and maybe, you'll last longer than the last temp who thought she had opinions. Sarah held his stare. Her heartbeat thundered, but her expression stayed still. I'll keep that in mind. Jeremy straightened his tie and walked out. The door shut behind him with a heavy click. Amber stood frozen in the doorway, her hands trembling. I told you, she whispered. He finds out everything. Sarah sank back into her chair, anger and guilt pressing down like weight. This wasn't just one cruel manager. This was a system that let cruelty thrive. A system she'd built. She looked down at her hands, the same hands that had signed policies, approved protocols, trusted others to handle people problems. Now those same policies were being used to protect a predator. And in the next room, a woman who could barely lift her arm was working through pain because silence had become her only shield. Sarah whispered under her breath, Not anymore. In that small break room filled with fear, Sarah realized something far bigger than corporate failure. The danger wasn't just in the manager who abused his power. It was in every leader who looked away. The night shift lights buzzed faintly against the dark glass of HarvestMart's windows. Rain threatened in the distance, painting the asphalt in streaks of silver. Sarah lingered by the entrance, pretending to tie her shoes as the last customers filtered out. Her shift had ended 20 minutes ago, but she wasn't ready to leave. Something in her gut told her there was more to Amber's fear than words could explain. Through the sliding doors, she watched Amber at Register 5, balancing her cash drawer with careful precision. Her movements were slower tonight. Her face, even under the dim lights, looked pale, strained. Jeremy Cruz stood a few aisles away, arms crossed, watching. Every time Amber's gaze flickered toward him, her shoulders tensed. Sarah pretended to wipe down a counter, but her attention never left them. Jeremy said something, low, sharp, and Amber nodded quickly. Then she closed her till, grabbed her coat, and walked toward the exit. Sarah followed a few steps behind, staying in the shadows as Amber stepped into the cool night air. The parking lot was nearly empty now. Amber stood under a flickering streetlight, clutching her bag, scanning the lot like she was expecting someone. Then, the low rumble of a truck engine. A white pickup pulled up slowly, headlights sweeping across the cracked pavement. Sarah's breath caught when she saw who was driving. Jeremy Cruz. He leaned out the window, his face tight with irritation. "Get in," he said flatly. Amber froze. "Jeremy, please, not here." "Get in the truck, Amber," I said now. Her casted arm tightened around her bag. "I told you I needed space." His voice dropped, low, dangerous. "You don't get to tell me what you need. You get in the truck, or I'll make sure you don't show up on the schedule next week." Amber's eyes darted toward the store, toward Sarah's direction, but she didn't see her hidden by the column near the door. Her lip trembled. Then she opened the passenger door and slid inside. The door slammed shut. Jeremy drove off, tires hissing through the wet pavement. Sarah stood frozen in the darkness, her heart pounding so loud it drowned the hum of the streetlights. It wasn't just workplace intimidation. It wasn't just cruelty. It was control, the kind that followed you home. She finally exhaled and pulled out her phone, recording a quick voice memo in a whisper. Amber Roberts. Employee ID 2845. Seen leaving at 9:46 p.m. with Jeremy Cruz, manager, in his vehicle. She appeared afraid. She hit save. Her hands trembled slightly. In 15 years of running Harvest Mart, Sarah had seen lawsuits, scandals, theft, but never this. Never something that reached this deep, this personal. She looked back at the glowing store sign, her name, Harvest Mart by Sarah Robinson, printed in clean white letters. As she walked toward her car, a light rain began to fall, soft at first, then steady. She sat in the driver's seat, gripping the steering wheel, staring at the rain on the windshield. She thought about the girl with the bruises and the bandaged neck, about the man who smiled in meetings and terrorized people behind her back, and about herself, the CEO who'd built a company on promises of fairness, now realizing those promises had turned hollow in her absence. Her reflection blurred in the glass, caught between guilt and fury. "He's not going to touch her again," she whispered to herself. "Not while I'm still breathing." The rain grew heavier. Lightning flashed in the distance, a brief, white pulse that illuminated the store one last time before darkness returned. Inside, all the lights were off. But Sarah knew, behind that darkness, someone was still suffering. And she wasn't leaving this story half-written. The next morning, Sarah didn't put on her thrift cardigan right away. She sat in her small rented apartment, the one she'd chosen to blend in, staring at her laptop, the Harvest Mart logo glowing faintly in the corner of the screen. It used to fill her with pride. Now, it made her sick. Every click through the internal HR system revealed another quiet failure, not of the company, but of its leadership. Her leadership. She read through reports, scanned archived messages, and found Amber's name again and again, buried under policy codes and resolved stamps. Amber had asked for help. She'd filed for workplace protection 3 times. And every single time, Jeremy Cruz had closed the case himself. Sarah leaned back, rubbing her temples. She could almost hear the board's excuses already. "We have protocols. We followed procedure." No policy was technically violated. Policy. That word felt like poison now. Because behind every policy, there was a person suffering in silence. She opened Amber's employee file again. Attached was a photo, Amber on her first day of work, smiling wide, eyes bright, wearing her Harvest Mart badge with pride. The woman she saw now at Register 5 looked like the light inside her had been slowly turned off. Sarah's throat tightened. "I built this company to help people survive," she whispered, "not to teach them how to hide their pain." She closed the laptop, grabbed her plain gray jacket, and headed for the store. This time, she wasn't just observing. She was going to act. By mid-afternoon, the store was busy, carts squeaking, children crying, music playing overhead. Sarah stood near the end of aisle 7, pretending to restock canned soup while her eyes followed Amber at the registers. Amber looked worse than before. The bruises on her neck were darker, her movement slower. Every time the scanner beeped, She winced as though the sound itself hurt. Sarah approached during a quiet moment. "Amber," she said softly, "has anyone followed up from HR? About what happened?" Amber froze. She looked around quickly before whispering, "You shouldn't ask that here." Her voice was barely a breath. "Amber." "Please," she interrupted, her tone trembling. "You don't understand. He said if I ever talk again, I'll lose my job, and he'll make sure no one else hires me. He knows people. He can do it." Sarah felt her chest ache. "I can help," she said gently. Amber shook her head. "No one can. He's everywhere." Before Sarah could respond, a shadow fell over the register. Jeremy Cruz. "Everything okay here?" he asked, smiling, but his eyes were knives. "Yes, sir," Amber stammered, "just helping her scan." Jeremy's gaze flicked between them. "Good. Don't let chatting slow you down." He turned to leave, then paused. "Reynolds, isn't it?" "Yes," Sarah replied evenly. "Good. You'll learn something here. Employees who stick their nose where it doesn't belong don't last." He smirked and walked off. Amber's hands were shaking. Sarah's pulse thundered. In that moment, Sarah knew. The policies weren't broken. The people enforcing them were. It happened 3 days later. The store was full, Friday rush hour. Lines stretching down the aisles. Amber was working fast, her movements stiff, trying to hide how much her arm hurt. A customer yelled suddenly, "You double-scanned that. Are you blind?" Heads turned. Amber froze. "I'm sorry, sir," she began, her voice shaking. Jeremy appeared instantly, striding across the floor. "What's the problem here?" "She overcharged me," the customer barked. Jeremy didn't even check the register. He just turned on Amber. "Useless," he snapped. "You can't do one simple thing right? Maybe if you weren't crying all the time." The words sliced through the store. Amber's face flushed red. Tears welled in her eyes. The other employees looked down, pretending not to hear. Sarah felt her blood boil. Enough. She stepped forward from the aisle, her voice calm but loud enough to cut through the noise. "That's enough, Jeremy." He turned, frowning. "Excuse me." "I said, that's enough. You've humiliated her long enough." Sarah stayed with Amber in the back office, helping her sit down, her cast trembling in her lap. Amber tried to apologize, her voice cracking. "I didn't want to cause trouble." Sarah knelt in front of her, eyes steady. "You didn't cause this. He did." Tears spilled down Amber's cheeks, silent and uncontrollable. For the first time in months, she wasn't being yelled at. She was being heard. Over the next few days, Sarah launched a full internal investigation. HR logs, employee statements, deleted files, all uncovered the same truth. Jeremy Cruz had been manipulating records, threatening staff, and covering up reports of abuse. But there was one discovery that broke Sarah the most. A security camera still from the back hallway, time-stamped 2 months earlier. Jeremy cornering Amber, his hand gripping her wrist while she cried. Sarah turned off the screen, her eyes burning with fury. She personally called the police. She personally called Amber's family. And she personally fired every manager who'd enabled the silence. When she met Amber again a week later, Amber was bandaged but safe, living with her sister, waiting for her protective order to be approved. Amber smiled weakly. "You really did it." Sarah squeezed her hand. "No, Amber. We did. You had the courage to survive. I just made sure the world finally listened." 2 months later, the morning sun streamed through the ground glass windows of a newly renovated HarvestMart branch, brighter, warmer, and different. A new policy board hung near the entrance. HarvestMart Safe Space Program. Zero tolerance for harassment. 24/7 direct line to the CEO. Employees smiled. The air felt lighter. Amber Roberts walked through the doors, not in uniform this time, but in a new navy blouse with a badge that read Assistant HR Officer. She stopped when she saw Sarah by the registers. They smiled at each other, quiet, genuine, shared understanding in their eyes. Amber said softly, "Feels strange, being back here." Sarah nodded. Strange, but right. The two women stood together, watching customers check out. Safe, respected, visible. Sarah turned slightly, her voice calm and reflective. Sometimes the people who build empires forget the people who keep them standing. And sometimes it takes walking among them, without power, without a name, to finally see the truth. Amber smiled, eyes glistening. "Thank you, Ms. Robinson." "No," Sarah said softly. "Thank you, Amber. You reminded me what leadership really means." As the automatic doors opened and sunlight poured in, the world outside looked a little less cold.